Over a month ago now, I installed this giant aftermarket head unit in my 3rd gen Toyota Tacoma. I did this because my factory head unit didn't have Apple CarPlay. Bluetooth was only working about 50% of the time, which was really annoying, and I had to do like a factory reset every single week to get it to work again. And after seeing this new head unit come out, I was interested in a lot of the upgraded features, like the 10-inch giant touchscreen, of course, that was the big draw to it, the ability to access cameras anytime, the array of sound settings. I mean, there's so many different things you can adjust on there, the ability to hook stuff up over HDMI, and more. Here's the thing though, this head unit is expensive, and with its price, I have my expectations with how good this thing should be. Some of you guys may already know that I have an install and initial review video on this radio here on my channel, but now that it's been some time and I've gotten to use it pretty much every single day, I have some additional things I want to talk about and review. So I've got a list of pros and cons about this high-tem radio for the 3rd gen Toyota Tacoma, and I think people want to hear the negatives first. If I were interested in buying this, I would want to know that first too. So let me start out with some of the things I don't necessarily like about this aftermarket head unit. Starting out with not necessarily my least favorite thing about it, but something that is kind of annoying. The boot up time is not quick at all. The good thing though is while it's booting up, you can still get in reverse, and you guys just saw the camera view still shows up. And I did time the boot up time difference between this radio and my factory one, and just having been used to how quick the factory one is compared to this one, it is something that is slightly bothersome every time I turn on the truck, but I'm getting used to it. So the boot up thing isn't the worst thing in the world, but I do have something I want to show you guys that I really don't like about this head unit, and it has nothing to do with the software or any of the electronics. It actually has to do with this mount that they've designed for it. So if you've watched my install video, you'll know how this screen attaches to the mount, which attaches to the dash. So this piece right here, this outer trim that's holding the screen is separate from this piece right here, which comes from the factory. Now this factory piece right here is decently sturdy. You can see if I wiggle it around, nothing moves too much. It doesn't really make a sound. Obviously it was designed by Toyota to not rattle around too much, or that would be really, really annoying. But with this piece right here, I will say the tolerances aren't that tight, and if I wiggle it back and forth, you guys can hear the little bit of play it has, and if I wiggle it side to side, you could hear that little bit of knocking. So the issue with this thing, of course, is this thing can start to rattle when you drive. Now I have this tightened down pretty much all the way, and I'll kind of take it apart to show you guys in more detail kind of where the problem lies, or if yours starts rattling, how to fix it. My problem was when I originally installed this over a month ago, I had tightened down all those screws. Everything was fine. There was no rattling when I was driving. And then of course I took my truck to the desert, and what did we do? Yep, you guessed it. Tested out my new Fox shocks. Oh, big whoop. And sure, maybe you aren't going to drive and put as much abuse on your truck as I did that day, but after that day, this head unit was rattling like crazy. It was so annoying. So I took it apart and kind of tightened everything down, and now we're back to being good. So let me take this apart to kind of show you what I had to re-tighten down. Alright, so this is the OEM dash trim piece from Toyota, and this is the Stinger High 10 mount. This mounting plate is plastic, so when you're tightening all these screws down, you kind of don't want to go too tight because you don't want to keep stripping the plastic, but at the same time, if you don't go tight enough, that's what's going to cause your jitter, which is really annoying. I wish this thing was made of metal, because when you start to have like a lot of plastic things, that's when you're gonna get a lot of jitters. So I'm pretty sure because of this plate, there's potential for a lot of rattle, which I've already experienced. So again, I had to take this off and tighten down those 6 screws, which was not difficult at all. I'm just hoping that after my next off-road trip, or all my off-road trips, I don't have to have this routine piece of maintenance where I'm going back and retightening all of these, because eventually I'm gonna just strip the plastic away. So CarPlay on this head unit actually works really well. I don't really have any complaints about that, except maybe one time when my phone was connected. For some reason, the head unit didn't recognize it as a device, and my phone was saying it wasn't like a recognizable device. And so after I restarted the head unit, which you could do by either turning the truck off and turning the truck on again, or there's this tiny little button that you can press, then it works. So I don't want to really say that's the fault of the head unit, because it could have totally been my phone. But the one thing about CarPlay is that when you buy a head unit as expensive as this one is, you kind of don't expect a wired CarPlay. Wireless would have been really nice, especially because the 2020 and up Tacomas already come from the factory with a head unit that has wired CarPlay. As an engineer myself, I could totally see that maybe wireless CarPlay would be a lot less reliable, and Stinger wanted to play it safe and do wired. But at the same time, if we're comparing other aftermarket head units you can put in your Toyota Tacoma at around the same price point, a lot of them offer wireless CarPlay. One of the other things is that this head unit comes with a lot of buttons, and what I do like is it comes with this volume knob. This is just awesome. You don't see this in a lot of other aftermarket head units, and I did talk about this in my original install video. You can also mute by pressing this front button, and you still get to keep your steering wheel controls. However, if you're playing music, for example, the only way to pause the music itself is to do it on screen, which I do not like. So you can't like hold down the mute button in order to pause it. That just temporarily turns the screen off. With the old unit, I used to be able to use my steering wheel controls and hold this button down right here, but I'm telling you that does not work. The only way to play and pause music is by pressing the screen. So like this home button's useful, the knob, like I said before, is really useful to me, same with the mute. However, I do not use these forward and backwards buttons at all, so I think one of these could be like a play pause button. That would have been really nice. And I will say, while I don't use this button that often, it's pretty nice. It brings up Siri. Hey Siri.
Good afternoon. How can I help?
Okay, so I have my truck in ignition on mode, which is why the check engine light is on and there's a warning. But something else I wanted to show you guys is you do lose the compass feature. So before, when you went to this tab, there was a compass. Now you don't have that with this head unit. You also don't get to see the current music playing, and you can't control your music from here. But you could still use your steering wheel controls, and that'll control the music on the head unit. You just don't see it displayed over here. These two things weren't really a big issue for me because I never really used them anyways. But I saw a couple comments on my first video about your TPMS, or your tire pressure, basically not showing. That is not true. You still get that. You also still get your lane departure alert if you have that in your truck, which I think all the Toyota Tacomas do. I have the TRD Off-Road, so I get these roll and pitch angles. I still get those. And like some other features that I still have is I still have my blind spot monitor, my parking sensor. I saw in the comments that someone said you lose those, but you definitely don't. Again, the only things you really lose when it comes to like safety features or like other stuff on the dash is the compass and your music. The last thing I have to say in my list of negatives, and honestly this isn't a big issue for me at all, is the Bluetooth range. I find that the Bluetooth connectivity itself is really good. It connects fast and it seems like it's pretty reliable for all the times I've used it. However, the range is not great, and I don't have any exact numbers because I haven't tested it before. But basically, if you have your phone connected over Bluetooth and then you walk out of the truck with your phone, I'm just guesstimating this number because again, I've never measured it myself, but say you're 20 feet away, your phone will disconnect from the head unit via Bluetooth. Honestly, since I use Apple CarPlay so much and CarPlay is wired now, I really don't have an issue with this. It's just something I've noticed. Maybe it's actually not a bad thing because I remember there were times where I would take my truck into service for Toyota before I had this head unit, of course, and I was still running my factory one. But basically I'd be like sitting in the waiting area of the service center on my phone on a phone call, and then the tech would take my truck, and I don't actually know how far away my truck was from the waiting area, but I assumed it was like decently far away. The Bluetooth range on the factory head unit was so good to where my phone would then connect to my truck, and there were multiple times where my call actually transferred to there, which was just kind of funny. So that's just something I have found. My Bluetooth range is now limited with this new high-10 radio. Okay, so those are my list of negatives. Honestly, everything added up is not too bad, except maybe the jittering issue. That's like the only thing I really don't like, is the way it mounts. But everything else is bearable, but I wanted to do my due diligence and list out all those negatives for you guys in case maybe they were a bigger deal to you. Okay, so what do I like about this head unit? I feel like I was pretty critical in that previous section. Well, the biggest thing I have to say is I am just in love with the 10-inch touchscreen. It is so nice to have a screen this size. Also, yes, it does stick out more, so it is more bulky in that sense, but it doesn't really bother me, and I actually like that it sticks out a little bit because it makes the screen feel even bigger. You can adjust the brightness if you find that it's too bright for you. As you can see, I like to keep mine at almost the max. And besides just the overall driving experience, what's nice is that you can go to this cameras section and you just get a bigger image when you're reversing, or if you want to go into the front camera, which I have hooked up. This was a huge plus for me when I took my truck out to the desert. Sometimes when you're going over hills and stuff, you can't see over it, so having a front camera is really nice. And with how big and bright the screen is, even though it was super sunny in the desert, it was still bright enough where I could easily see what was in front of me, which I really loved. Speaking of the cameras, it's nice that you can access them anytime, which I know you could do in the 2020 and up head units, but I wasn't able to do this in my old head unit. And for the rear camera over here, you can actually hit this button. It's mute and reverse. So basically, when you back up, it will mute your music. Not pause, that would have been a lot nicer, but mute is still okay. For safety, I like there to be minimal sound when I'm backing up, just so I'm less distracted. So this feature is really cool. And then another thing about the cameras is that there is a setting you can actually go to. I'll show you where it is. So if you hit this VSS, I think it stands for something like vehicle, sensor, something. I'm not exactly sure. But basically, it's a sensor that triggers camera 4, which in my case is the front camera, where after I go in reverse and the backup camera automatically turns on, after I get out of reverse, this trigger basically tells Cam 4, again my front camera, to turn on. So for about like 5 to 10 seconds after I reverse and the backup camera's on, the front camera will show. And I think that's nice because sometimes if I'm like pulling into a spot and I don't pull in perfectly and I have to back up again and then go forward, after I back up and the backup cam turns on, I can see the front view automatically. I don't have to go in these camera tabs and hit front camera. So that was a nice little feature I liked. Back to the home screen, in general, I really like this layout. Now, I don't think you can customize it, which is a little bit annoying, but it's so nice that Apple CarPlay is just right here, right next to the driver's side. Because my phone's not plugged in right now, it's grayed out, but when I actually have my phone plugged in, since I use CarPlay every time I drive, it's nice that it's right next to me and I can easily hit it. Same thing with the cameras button. I use this a lot. So it's nice that even if I'm in CarPlay or I'm in like another tab, for example, I could just hit the home button. I'm straight back to home and I can easily hit the camera button and I'm straight back to the camera screen. So I think they did a really good job with the layout, even though you can't move these around to the best of my knowledge. I want to add that there's a lot of other things I really like about this head unit, like the refresh rate is so much better than my factory radio, the screen resolution is better, but I already talked about a lot of those features in my original video I made, which is why I didn't want to repeat myself here. The last thing I kind of want to end on in this video is really the reliability of this head unit. Now, I haven't had it obviously for a really long time, but so far, besides the Apple CarPlay not connecting that one time and me having to reset the head unit, and again, it might have been all my phone's fault, I'm not sure. The software seems reliable, there haven't been any hiccups, and to be fair, my factory head unit didn't have issues at all, as you would expect, until kind of we came to the 3-year mark. That's when those Bluetooth issues started happening. And my Stinger has a long way to go to prove itself in terms of reliability. But something I kind of feared with getting an aftermarket head unit was reliability. I mean, you never really know. Typically with electronics that you get aftermarket, they're not as thoroughly tested as OEM parts. So I have nothing but good things to say about the reliability and usability so far, but we'll see down the line, and I will definitely keep you guys updated if any of that changes or I have any more problems. So yeah, my overall sentiment is that this is a pretty good head unit. I know there was a lot of negatives I listed in this video, but I personally really like it. I don't want to go back to my old head unit. Even the rattling issue I can deal with. I just hope it's not a continual thing. And I want to say this truck is a 2019, and if you also have a 2019 or older Tacoma, you likely have the Entune 2.0 radio. In my opinion, it just lacks a lot of features, and you gain a lot when you upgrade to the Stinger High 10. Now, 2020 and up Tacomas is a different story because you guys have the Entune 3.0 head units. Those ones are a lot more full featured. You have your Apple CarPlay. I'm not sure if it's every single trim, but I know for at least the TRD Pros, you can access all your different cameras anytime already. So you might not get a whole new array of features with the Stinger High 10 if you're coming from a 2020 and newer Tacoma, but I've got to say that 10-inch touchscreen is really, really nice. I just really hope the rattling issue doesn't continue for me, and hopefully if you guys have a Stinger High 10, you really haven't experienced the rattling issue. Anyways, that's really all I have to say for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope it was helpful. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys have a High 10 in your Tacoma, if you have the same experience as I do, if you have different experiences, of course. What extra things do you have added to your pros and cons list? I want to know. Anyways, if you guys want to connect more with me, you can follow me on my Instagram. It is at ChloeKuoTaco. I post more in real time on there. But other than that, thank you again for watching. Happy modding your Tacomas, and I hope I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.